I am so happy that so many people showed up. There are, today I wanted to go over a couple things where we talk about how this class is structured and what to expect a little bit. And I want to answer people's questions, but before we go too far, I want to say a couple things that I hope will alleviate some stress that a lot of people have taking online classes. And I want to do that before I get too much into introduction or anything like that. One is I want you to make sure that you understand my job is to help you guys succeed. And I know that almost everybody at UVU, I mean, all of us have real world lives. If you had a normal schedule that you were in full control of, you'd probably be taking a class in person. The fact that you're taking an online class with a flexible schedule means that you are a very busy person. And I do put due dates in my online classes. I do that specifically so that Canvas can tell you and remind you of when things are coming up. But I want to tell you, and it is a really good idea to stay as close to that as you can possibly stay as the semester goes on. And when I grade, you will see that zeros will show up. But this is an online class. We don't have the opportunity to see each other a couple times a week. We don't have an opportunity to talk to each other all the time. So in my online classes, everything is well and truly due on the last day of classes, I think, which is April 23rd, something like that. And you will see zero showing up, but as soon as you submit the stuff and turn it in, you get the grade. When you do an assignment, when you submit a quiz, if you don't get the score that you want, I always make comments, and usually they're not sarcastic. Most of the time, they're actually all verging on helpful. But if you follow those comments and resubmit, you will get more points. What that means is if you turn in a quiz and you get 53 out of 56 points, for example, and I tell you, hey, revisit this on these questions you missed, you can retake the quiz. I have it set on infinite. You can retake the quiz as many times as you need to get a perfect score. If you turn in something and you get 75%, and I'm telling you, well, you missed these things and you need to readdress them in your assignment, or you completely forgot to read that part of it, go ahead, rework it, resubmit it, and it's fine. And the reason I do that is because if we are in a real class seeing each other face to face, I can see where there's going to be problems. I can come up and say things. You can see where there's going to be problems, and you can come up to me and ask me questions. Because we're online, we don't have that flexibility. And that is why I have to be flexible, I feel, with submissions and the interchange. And always feel free to email me with questions and things like that. And my phone number is on the syllabus, so you can text me and I can call you back. It's not that big of a deal. Does everybody understand that? Oh, and by the way, those of you who have cameras that will work, please turn them on. That would be really nice. But does everybody understand that? My position on online classes? Because to be completely honest, if you guys were totally normal, you'd be taking a normal class. You know, the reality is 3 out of 5 Americans today have either neuroses or some sort of other psychological issue. So all of us are kind of messed up in the head. But I think that manifests in the most healthy way when we take online classes. But is that something that makes sense to you guys? Because I do not want anybody freaking out. Oh no, I can't get it done. I'm going to fail this miserably. I don't want anybody doing that, because the reality is this class has to be flexible, because if we were an in-person class, we would be flexible that way. But we don't have that flexibility, so I have to be flexible when you come here. And my job is not to make sure that only 15% of you get A's. My job is to make sure that everybody succeeds, as long as you put in the effort. If you don't care, it's really hard to convince any of your teachers that you care. But as long as you care, as long as you're trying, as long as you let me know what's going on. Like several people have said, hey, I've tried getting the book, but I can't. If you need to go over to the Fuller Library, you can do a short-term checkout and take your quiz right there in the library if you're on campus. There's several different ways of getting hold of the textbook. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I do not have anything that is contagious. And I saw Long kind of duck a little bit when I coughed. I'm pretty sure you're not going to get a virus over the computer, even if I did. Okay. So don't worry about it.
No, it was weird. We both cough at the same time, so that's why I
Oh,
ducked.
okay. Okay. Eerie timing. But if it does make you feel better, use an alcohol wipe on your screen after we're done. So stay clean. But I wanted to say that at the very beginning because like I said, I do not want people to freak out. Now, there are a couple of people that are trying to take this class that are not in the area and don't have access to stuff right away. They may be a week behind or whatever. My experience in the last 6 years working with UVU students is that you guys work really hard. And it is a very rare thing that somebody who is committed to a class is not able to finish it. When COVID hit about 4 years ago, one of my students had to take care of both of his parents because they were both hit pretty hard. 2 weeks before the end of the term, he had a D minus, and he told me the situation. We talked about it. He'd been doing the work all along. He just hadn't been able to turn it in, and he had given up after a month because he figured, oh, I'm too far behind. He was able to turn in everything and pull away with an A minus out of the whole class. Okay, so that's been my experience with UVU. Maybe you guys have a different experience, but I don't have any problem. I know that you guys are going to succeed. That's not an issue. As long as you turn in what you do and stay on top of stuff, it's not that big of a deal. I've also seen that all of the UVU students that have taken these art classes already have experience in the professional sector, which is really nice. I've also taught at other universities where that isn't always the case. Like certain unnamed, principally religious universities, different things like that. And I really appreciate that you guys I expect the level of professionalism that you bring when in other teaching situations, there's no reason to. And so, that can be kind of bad because if you suck and you want to, be lazy about this class, the expectations are a little bit high. But what that also means is my experience has been if I grade something incorrectly and you let me know, well, this is what you said in the class, I was there, you're wrong. As long as you're nice about it, I mean, it's not a big deal, and I really appreciate that. A couple people have told me, hey, these links are working and stuff, and you guys were nice, and that's excellent. There's no reason not to be nice. I mean, it takes less energy to be nice than otherwise. It actually burns more calories to frown and be a jerk than it does to smile and be pleasant. And you get more endorphins in your bloodstream too. But as long as you let me know what's going on, there's not an issue. And if you don't get your nose bent out of shape, just let me know what's going on. And I really appreciate that. I'm sure none of you will get your nose bent out of shape. I say that knowing it's a lie. Somebody's going to get upset. I have had students complain to the chair about what a jerk I am. And then when everybody else in the class stepped forward and said, actually, that's not what we heard, it put things in a bit of a different light. And so I try really hard not to be a jerk unless I think it's going to be funny. Then it's okay. I'm really pleased that so many people are here today. This is awesome. About half the class. We are meeting on Wednesday nights during this semester. That's going to be every week. I've had a couple people that I don't think read the whole thing all the way through and said, hey, I can't make it on Wednesdays. Well, but I need this class. Am I going to miss the attendance? Well, no. what I've noticed is that the vast majority of people that attend live consistently are getting A's. I've also noticed that people who get A's, people get A's whether or not they attend live. The way you get credit for attendance is after you get off of this meeting, you can submit 5 things that you learned after you did it live, or tomorrow after you watch it, the video, you can submit 5 things that you learned. You get the same 5 points for attendance either way. So don't get stressed out about that too. What I was saying was that even though you can get A's, and a lot of people have gotten A's without ever attending live any of the meetings, there is a higher percentage of the people who attend live who get A's than otherwise. So you can get A's either way, but and there's extraneous circumstances and all that too. But it's interesting to me that it is a higher percentage of people that attend live who get A's than otherwise. I say that, of course, last semester, the person who got, the irritating people that always get 104% on everything that nobody can really stand to be next to. The person who did that showed up for the first class and then just watched everything else the day after because she had a job, and that's so that proves that you can get an A either way. So if you miss it, that brings to mind something. Letting me know what's going on is really important, because even if you are concerned about, we talked about when things are actually due and all that. A lot of people email me and say, hey, this week is really tight. I think I'm going to have to turn this in a couple days late. They'll still get a 0. And then when I see that they've turned it in, I go back and change the grade. That's not that big of a deal from my end, and it should not be that big of a deal for you. If something like that happens. Now, that is important to let me know what's going on, though. I say that's because the final is mandatory. Everybody has to have the final. And for us, the final is going to be on the first day of finals. I drop the assignment. You have the week to do it. And then at the end of the week, that assignment is closed. You don't get an extension on that, but you get a full week to do it. When I'm doing a live class, I tell everybody, hey, if you can't make it tell me 2 weeks before, make arrangements, go to the Office of Accommodations. Have you guys ever talked to the Office of Accommodations on campus? They are incredibly patient, incredibly nice people. Even if you want to look for something to volunteer and you don't need accommodations, I would check out the office, see what, just see if they have any opportunities. But really, really nice people. I say, you talk to them 2 weeks before the final, because if you miss it, you can miss a whole letter grade. And that's the department mandate. I actually had a call in the middle of class, an hour into our final. Somebody was calling from, I think it was the Dulles International Airport bathroom, and said, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Well, they made their flight. I mean, does anybody know when the days of finals are scheduled? They're scheduled at least 6 months before the final, and they are online the moment they're scheduled. So you guys have at least a half a year to make your plans. And this person still made plans to be on an airplane during our final. And so, sadly, they did not get a very good grade. But when people have talked to me beforehand and I'm doing live final, they've had a friend in the class, we've put them on speakerphone, and we can take care of it like that, do the final through the phone. So, my point of all that kind of blathering nonsense is that my job is to help you succeed, not to be a jackass. And so as long as you let me know what's going on and we're able to work together and both of us can be flexible, you guys can succeed. Okay. Well, I do want to reiterate, I do not take attendance during these things. The reason I want so many people to be here, as many people as possible, is I feed off the energy of your questions, and that helps us to direct what we talk about to what is most helpful for you and most beneficial for you. And so the way to get attendance for this is to go to the attendance assignment and submit it through there. So what I would like to do is, excuse me, I'm sorry, like I was telling Long, I do not have anything easily communicable, but when I'm talking, my throat gets really dry. So tell my wife this is not candy, it's medicinal. So if I do cough and it comes out my nose, you'll understand what it is. Oh, we had taco night one night. My oldest brother had a coughing fit and shot a bean right through his nose. That that is a memory you get when you're a 6-year-old kid that does not leave, by the way. Just putting that out there. Okay, I'm going to go through stuff really quick. And the reason I want to do this is I want to give a framework so that you guys have can get questions answered as we go through. You'll notice that if the moment you start opening up a module, I've noticed that a lot of people, when they first come to the college experience, will go straight to the assignments, try to get the assignments done because they know better. The modules are locked, so you have to go through each thing in sequence, because I found that answers 99% of every question people have. And it's before you have to ask questions and things like that, it's always a good idea to read through the assignment and see if you understand it. And we have that background information beforehand, so you can go through and read that too. Usually that provides enough context so you can get what's going on in the assignment. And we'll talk about the assignment as well. You'll notice that a lot of this stuff is due on January 12th, which is Sunday. And what I'm basically saying is just get it done as soon as you can. Your $25 lab fee, or 35 or 420, whatever, how much is it now? Brittany, is it like in the 50s yet?
I think it was like 30 or 35. I don't remember.
Okay, whatever that is, it's going to be a good deal, because Jason takes that $30. He takes his job really seriously. He'll put together a kit for us where you could build a hot rod or a house almost with it. He has so much stuff crammed in those little bags. As soon as those are ready, which will probably be next week, I will let everybody know and I'll tell you where they are, so you can either go on campus and get it yourself or have a family member get it. But there will be a sign out list where they will need to put your name and phone number, whoever picks it up for you, just to make sure that we don't have multiple people from the same family getting several kits for the same person. Because I've actually had that happen before, where mom and the student didn't communicate clearly, and so they both grabbed a kit for the student. Okay, we have over an hour left, and I think that that's going to be plenty of time to do what we need to. And like I said, I want to go through stuff, and I'm going to try really hard not to do that. I know typically the first class, the teachers always read the syllabus because they have no idea what to do. There's some things that I want to touch on. I want to just show you where the information is. If you guys have specific questions, then ask me about it. Okay. Now give me just a short half an hour while I figure out how to share my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is my screen is going to look different than yours. I understand that, but I want to show you what's going on from my perspective. I do have all of these green dots going down. I'm going to take off most of the green dots. I want everybody to kind of see what's ahead, and then I'm going to get rid of most of the stuff, but you'll still see the module headers. And the reason is I don't want people to feel too overwhelmed. But I do want you to see that things are kind of building on each other. The course overview, there's a lot of stuff to read, but all these are really short or they're videos. Talking about how a course will work, we've already gone over a lot of that. A couple of you have told me that the syllabus, I didn't change the day or in everything, and I didn't. Some of the links had busted. I really appreciate it when you guys email me and say, "Hey, this link isn't working," or "I can't access this website." I really appreciate that because then I can find an alternative. But I want everybody to read as. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. We'll talk about attendance in just a second. But I wanted everybody to read all this stuff or at least glance over it as we get ready to go so that you kind of have a little bit of background and it gives us a shared vocabulary to talk about stuff. There are 3 things I want to talk about this really quickly, particularly through here. Well, I guess 3.5 things. I'm going to talk about myself just a little bit. I don't. How many of you guys actually saw that photo? Did anybody notice that I was holding the book upside down? Just if you didn't, I feel so sorry for you and your parents. I sleep maybe 4 to 5 hours a night, and I read a lot. You can talk to Jason. You talk about anybody there. I read a lot. Because of that, my brain is a lot like a pachinko machine. There's a lot of stuff rattling around. When I was going to BYU, both my BFA and my MFA are from BYU. They're in sculptural stained glass. During that time, I studied comparative religions. I studied English. I studied a lot of different stuff because it was just boring to focus on one thing, which I think is kind of dumb in some respects. It's kind of fun to know a little bit about a lot of different things, but it's kind of dumb not to focus on things, I think. But that's 20 years ago. But anyway, I'm in addition to being a sculptor, I'm a glass sculptor. I also am an assemblage artist. I do installations. I what's it called? I set up exhibits. I get exhibits arranged and set them up for people to. What is that called? It starts with a C. Anybody?
Curator?
Curate. Yes, thank you. I curate, but I'm also a pluralist minister. I'm an expert in sacred geometry. I do stained glass. I've worked on 60 different temples, at least, for the LDS Church around the world. I've been to Iran to study there. I've studied from the university in Jordan over in the Middle East. I'm an honorary mullah in Iran. I am a volunteer for a Muslim organizations actually 3 different Muslim organizations in Salt Lake. The LDS Church has me attend temple openings and talk about the parallels between the LDS faith and Islam. But I also work as a pluralist minister. I also work with people who are Wicca and pagans. And so, that's the kind of weird background that I have. I'm also a certified alchemist, and I'll probably mention that at least 17 times every class session. And I teach art history at Utah Tech. So I do a lot of different things. I also set up the hot shop at BYU, the hot glass studio with Brian Christensen. And because of all that, I have a lot of background that is really varied. I was raised LDS. I did go on a full-time LDS volunteer minister ship. What's that? Volunteer ministration. But before going on my as a volunteer minister, I wanted to be able to be comfortable anywhere in the world. So I learned French, German, and Japanese. After that, I've learned Arabic and Turkish. I I don't remember a lot of it anymore because I've forgotten that in Greek. But what is really interesting to me is that has helped me to appreciate the fact that all of you guys have a really interesting umbrella of skills that you probably don't even recognize yourself. One of the exercises, if you are doing going to be doing service instead of research in this, one of the exercises is I have you go through and see and look at your talents. And I don't think you guys really realize. I mean, how many of you have 1, 2, or 3 jobs that you're working part time? You know, how many majors have you uh, looked at? Have you have you known exactly what? Yeah, 2 majors. How many books have you read just in the last 3 years because you had to going to school? How many of you know more than one language? Yeah, I mean, you guys are pretty freaking amazing, and I don't think you. One thing I've noticed is UVU students do not recognize how astounding they are, and that is something that I really appreciate because, and this brings me to another reason why I love having you guys come to these sessions live. None of you are the same. All of you have different interests. That means your art, when we start sharing it on discussion, it's going to be fantastically wildly different. None of you are going to be doing the same thing as anybody else. And I love that. I wish that we could have a class together because then you guys could see that in person. But we have the discussion so that all of you can share your art. I want you to go through and look at everybody else's stuff because that will give you ideas as well. And it's fantastic. One of the most fun I had teaching, I taught a stained glass class where one of the students was actually pre-med, and all of their incredible abstract designs, we found out at the end that they were all artificially colored biopsy slides from one of his textbooks. And they were fantastic. So I want you to be aware of that and bring that in. This is a 3D class. We are working in 3 dimensions. But if you're an illustrator, or photographer, or painter, and you're more used to 2D, I want to warn you, you will probably get headaches because you have to adjust your thinking. But that gives you a really interesting perspective to go at the 3D. If you do digital design or digital painting, same thing. It's fantastic. So please do not feel intimidated. Don't feel like you're out of place. Just be willing to look at yourself honestly and see how fantastic you are, so that you can bring that to the table. Um, you can say, "Well, yeah, I'm just one of 8 billion people. Who cares?" And that is definitely one way to look at it. Does anybody know how old the universe is? It's right around 17 billion years old. And even though cause and effect does not explain anything, we can look at the universe. That is a frame of reference that we can look at how everything is. And if we look at the cause and effect framework, the reality is the universe spent 17 billion years preparing the world for you and building the world just for you as well. There's a guy named Ibn Arabi. He was a writer in the 12th century. And he wrote a book called Bezels of Wisdom. I recommend you guys read it. But one of the things he said was, the universe extends out to infinity, which means wherever you stand, looking around, you are the center of the universe. Everything is built around you. Functionally, that and mathematically, that is exactly accurate. The universe spent 17 billion years making you. But you look around you, and there's 8 billion other people. They are also every bit as equal the center of the universe. The universe made everything preparing for them as well. So what I want you to think about that for just a second. But what that means is your voice is incredibly important because the universe has waited 17 billion years to hear it, but so is everybody else's. So no, when we're talking about art is another path of communicating. Art is a way of building where we invite something beyond our own temporal, ego-driven, narrow-centered self. And we invite that to help us to create something. But what that also means is, since it is a channel of communication, it allows us to speak the voice that the universe is waiting to hear from us. But we also need to remember that the people around us that are trying to speak, they have every bit as right to speak it, and their voice is just as important. So every voice is not important in art. That's a bad word. Every voice is vital. So I want you to think about that, and hopefully that will empower you to go ahead and do what you're doing, but also it will allow yourself to give you the permission, give yourself the permission to let everybody else be right as well. If you're right, it doesn't mean that everybody else is wrong. It just means that you're right, and that's it. If somebody is different, that doesn't mean they're dumb or wrong. That just means they're different, and that's it. So I want you to have that frame of reference in the back of your head and consider that. Hopefully it'll be empowering, and also it'll help you to listen and see what other people do. So we're going to go back to the Super Happy Fun syllabus again. So I blathered on about myself, blah, blah, blah. We talked a little bit about how this course will work. Does everybody understand how attendance works? This is what that looks like. And there's attendance here. You'll notice that each of these are blank right now. As soon as we're done today, I'm going to take the recording and upload it. And these are open. So as soon as you get off the meeting, you can go ahead and submit, hey, these are the 5 things that I learned. But to get the 5 points, you need to submit 5 things that you learned during our time together, whether you are here live or not. If you watch it through video. It's good to see people have already done introductions. 10 points of that. 2 parts of that is, or the half of it is making your own introduction. You get extra credit points if you turn that into a video. And then the other half is you have to respond to 3 other people. The pick up the kit thing, you notice that is due January 19th. I'm pretty confident that the kits will be done by then, but if they're not, that's fine. Even if you don't have access to your kit, you can see when things are due and stuff like that. If you don't have access to your kit and you don't feel that you can accomplish the thing that you need to, then just email me and let me know, hey, I can't do this. I don't have access to the materials, and that's fine. Get the quizzes out of the way, get the other stuff out of the way. So those are those bits about attendance. So talking about that, blah blah blah. Prep for first day of class. We'll spend. I'm going to go over this for just another second, and then I want to look at what people have done, and then I want to talk about the first assignment, the first sculpture assignment. I'm going to turn this off, turn the sharing off again really quick. How many of you went to the Polyhedra site and, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Something else I wanted to talk about was the book. How many of you went to archive.net or .com or whatever and found out that they're not showing the book anymore? Okay. I have found out they lost a lawsuit. They were using the first edition of the book on their website, making it available and free to everybody. They thought they had done everything right, but they got in a lawsuit last year, and I think they had to either severely curtail access to the book or remove access almost entirely. So I don't know if we can use archive anymore. That lawsuit is still continuing though, so we might get it back. But if not, you may have to get a copy yourself or go to the Fuller Library and check out a copy. And you're not going to be able to take the copy home. I believe Jason has 6 copies there that you can go and check out for an hour. Sit down, take your online open book quiz, referencing the chapters there, and then turn it back in, and you're fine. So there's still a free option. Do you guys remember what the winner was for the cheap purchase was?
$3.
Yeah, it was like $3.99. Holy crap! You can't even send something through the mail for that cheap. But if we go through online campus, the campus bookstore, it jumps up to about $92. Now I know Brienne really wants to spend $140 on her textbook for this class, and I said if you want to, that's fine, but I would suggest not spending more than $35. And she was a little disappointed. Hopefully, she's gotten over that. But
I found
Well,
a copy on Thrift Books that was $10.
oh, excellent. Okay, thrift books. I'm going to write that down because I will email that to everybody too.
I
I can
got mine
send
on
you.
Amazon for 8.
8? Was that
Yeah.
including shipping?
Including shipping 9 then. But yeah. Including shipping
Oh,
I would
that's
say
awesome.
9.
Okay. Okay, this is great. If you guys find it on anything else, let me know. Amazon is kind of tricky. You have to look at that. It should not be more than $35 for any of that because there is a business model where people will buy books and then put them on Amazon at the highest market value for that book. And Rand, you won. $8 is excellent getting that on Amazon. So, yeah.
Professor, the Wolverine, I think it's called Wolverine Access. They charge $250 a semester. All of your required textbooks are on that. So if you have to opt out of it, so they don't charge you $250 for like a $20 book if you already have it. Just a heads up.
I had no idea about that. That's pretty good. Yeah, if it's $250 for a $20 book, I took a philosophy class where the one textbook that just covered the Greek philosophers was $160 for a used copy. And holy crap, that's absurd. Anyway, and I have my own textbook online. It's from a German publisher, and it's only for I think $68 on Amazon. So if you guys want that, next time I'm in the area, I will be happy to autograph it for you. I think I've sold 2 of them in the last 8 years, which is awesome. That's 2 more than I would have otherwise if I hadn't sold any. Anyway, I don't want you guys to spend more than $35. You can also do the rent, text rental, stuff like that. That's great. And like I said, Fuller Library. But Long, thank you very much. That's excellent. Thrift.com. I will try to remember to add that to the list of possibilities because that is great. But I think that sadly archive is off the table, which is pretty sad because that I'm going to be there towards the end of March. I'm presenting on similarities between alchemy and hoodoo, the parallels. And one of the references I'm using is there was an Anglican minister that interviewed hundreds of hoodoo practitioners in the Mississippi River Valley. And he produced a 5-volume set of all these interviews. And it is a mere $337 to get that full set. But I found, because it was published in 1932 or something, I found it online at Archive for free. So that's pretty awesome. And I'm just sad we can't access our textbook through that. Okay. I did want to stress as well, the accommodations office. Remember them. If you guys are stressed out about anything, this class should be something that you enjoy and look forward to. It should not be stressing you out. If it does, if you start feeling overwhelmed, go to the accommodations office. A lot of the times teachers want to help you and do things that they don't normally want to do for most people in the class, but they can't do that without a university mandate. And they are given that mandate through the accommodations office. So if any of your classes, if you're feeling overwhelmed or anything, go to the accommodations office, and if they possibly can help you, they will help you. Sometimes they simply can't, but most of the time they can. And they will write a letter to the teacher so that the teacher, under university mandate, can make accommodations for you. So that's something to be mindful of. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the tools of artistic critique. We're going to go over this in more depth next week. I just want to touch on a little bit here. I want you to read it, look at this, try it out, see how it feels. When you guys hear the word critique or critical, most of you, do you have a positive or negative connotation to that?
Positive for me.
What's that?
Positive for me.
Positive.
It's a positive thing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I can't see.
it's a positive thing for me
All right.
because of previous classes.
Okay. For most, I was just going through here. I have 2 pages. A lot of people showed up. Nicole and Polly, I'm glad you're here. You on my screen, you're on the second page, so I don't see you, and I don't want you to think that you're ignored. So everybody else, I see Ashlyn, Maggie, Aaron, Aaliyah, Long, Shelby, Brianne, and Brittany. Okay, all right, great. So for you, it's positive. How many of you others have had a positive connotation with critique or critical?
I personally love critiques. I love bouncing my ideas off of others people's brain as well. This is what I do for work every day. So it's really, really helpful for me.
Okay, you're talking more about like a collaborative critique kind of environment, and I think I love that because if we were all together in the same room, this class would have a lot of energy because that kind of attitude is really beneficial. A lot of the times, though, when people hear critical or critique, it's negative. People think I've been in a lot of situations in undergrad days, graduate school, stuff like that. When people say, "Well, I'm going to critique you now," it's oh crap, and it makes my blood boil sometimes because I get these obsequious, self-absorbed, just real snots telling me when they can't see inside my head what I'm trying to do, how bad I'm doing it. You know, who are they to tell me? Um, I remember one critique I had where this guy said, "Well, why are you doing artwork about other religions? Why don't you do artwork on your own?" And he just went off on me. And I thought, if art is an element of communication, why shouldn't you explore as many different things as possible? And I just thought the guy was a big doofus. I'm glad that Brittany and Long, and then I think it was Shelby and Maggie were both raising their hand that they had a positive experience. I'm glad you guys did, because critique for this class is not intended to be negative at all. That's not what we're doing. The reality is, none of you know what's going on in the other person's brain. And you can't tell somebody how to make something better unless it's a craft or uh, um, a direction. You can't you can't tell somebody that they aren't doing what is inside their head because you don't know what's inside their head. You don't have that access to their vocabulary. And that's why I want you to look at this model of critique, because what we're not going to be telling people that they screwed up. And this is something that I think is really fascinating to me, because when you apply this to your own work, you know, all of us are artists. Who's our own worst critic? Negative critic. Mm-hmm. Brittany hit it on the head. We are all the time. And it's not because we're jerks, but it's because when we are producing art, we are constantly learning from our own efforts. And as soon as we get something done, we want to do the next thing because we know all these ways that we can improve it. We can get it better. And that added awareness of what we can do to improve it is incorrectly applied to what we've done, so that we see it as being inadequate. And it's not. I'm going to walk through this model really quick. I want you to read through this. I want you to read through it. We're going to talk about it every week. I want you to read through it as many times as you can until you memorize it. There are 4 steps. And each of these 4 steps, there's a description of what the step is, and then there are a series of questions to ask yourself. First one, description. We describe something. We are talking about it, how it impacts the world that we share. And that's it. We're not making judgments about it at this stage. We are just looking at it and talking about it. What does it look like? How big is it? How heavy is it? Is it sharp? Is it fluffy? All those kinds of questions. Second, analysis. So this one, we're not using any imagination. We're just using our observational skills. Analysis. In this one, we start thinking, how did they put it together? What kinds of things did the artist need to do to get that effect? Did they sand this for a long time? Did they polish it? Is this painted? Is the paint applied? If it's painted, is the paint applied with a brush or a palette knife? Is something glued on? Is something tacked together? Is it tied? Is it sewed? Now, on this one, interpretation, this is where we start thinking, okay, looking at this piece, there are some triggering things, and there are some symbolic things that I can probably draw from to kind of extrapolate what the artist was thinking. What were the motivations that the artist used? What's their worldview? Did they do this as an exercise, or did they do this as an expression? Are they trying to specifically communicate a very tight, resolved story with me? Or are they trying to expand my thinking and perception? What do you notice about the difference between those three, among those three steps? What are we driving towards? What are we applying more of as we go from description to analysis to interpretation? How much are we imagining when we describe something? None. We are just describing it. It's just, okay, this thing is blue. It is very blue. It is 6 inches long and it weighs 50 pounds. We're not using our imagination at all. In analysis, how much are we applying our imagination? How much are we applying our own extrapolation skills? We're applying more because here we're trying to imagine, okay, if I got that texture, this is what I would do to get it. How did the artist get that? What are the other factors that the artist was considering as they put this together? Why, how do they get this to fit? How do they get that shape? How do they get that texture? And then what are you applying more of when you get to the interpretation? Do you see what I'm getting at? The interpretation, because when you encounter an art object or an art thing, that is the genesis of a conversation that you have, whether or not the artist who built it is present. That almost doesn't matter. It's secondary sometimes. What you are doing, as soon as you encounter something and you start applying this, you are developing an avatar of the creator of that object. And you're engaging with a conversation on some level with that avatar. And you're beginning to communicate back and forth. And I know this kind of sounds a little bit weird, but if we think about the stuff that we've looked at and really looked at, sometimes we've developed this imaginal character that made that thing that we can see ourselves holding a conversation with. And that's what starts developing as you go through this process. When you do your own or critique your own object, this will also work, but it only works if you step away from the fact that you built the piece. You look at it as if you're a complete outsider and it's the first time you ever encountered it. And you'll find out that you can see it. This is a lot more effective than berating yourself that you didn't get it exactly right. And then judgment or evaluation. This is it successful? For this class, what are the standards of an artwork being successful for this class, for any of the classes that you make? What's the standard? What's the principal standards? And I'll tell you. One is it has to be well constructed. Okay, you get a crappy grade if you do crappy work. That's true of everything. And you guys are all adults. You can do decent work. That's what you've been doing for years. So it needs to be well crafted. And second, the parameters are it needs to fit the assignment. Those are the two most important ones. So when you are evaluating something, ask yourself, is it fitting the assignment? And you can do this for yourself. And this model actually applies to absolutely everything, not just critiquing artwork. If you are a nurse, this will apply to helping patients. If you're a computer programmer, this will apply to code. If you're a contractor, this will apply to a build. It applies to everything, because what you're doing is taking the ego out of the situation. You're looking at whatever the thing is, determining what it actually is, how it got there, why it got there, and whether or not it fits the parameters of the rationale behind building it. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're not out to tell Shelby that this is the worst refrigerator made out of pipe cleaners that we've ever seen. What we're going to be doing is looking at Shelby's work and thinking, this is really an interesting interpretation on the cultural expectations of what a refrigerator is and what refrigeration means when you construct a kitchen appliance out of an impractical material like pipe cleaners. And I think a really beneficial, I usually don't like assumptions, but we have to do that. That's how we're built. We have to make assumptions. It's good to keep your assumptions as open and flexible as possible, though, so you don't end up looking like a ding-a-dong. But one of the assumptions that we need to make as we look at artwork, particularly as we're critiquing, is whoever made that made it on purpose the way it is. And then everything falls into place. If it was accidental, then our observations don't mean anything, and our opinions don't mean anything. So looking at Shelby's pipe cleaner refrigerator, we have to assume that she did it on purpose. And then that starts a whole concatenation of related thoughts about what is she communicating regarding pipe cleaners and kitchen appliances. And it opens up the door to that conversation with her avatar. Does everybody see that, what I'm talking about? One thing that I have noticed about you guys at UVU is every artist is a perfectionist, but you're all using that word wrong. When you use the word perfectionist on yourself, you give that, this is that whole, misapplied self-critique where you're not judging the thing for what it is, you're judging it for all the things that you learned as you were putting it together and all the things that now you can do better. Perfection does not mean that it looks like it was made by Japanese nanites 30,000 years in the future. With absolutely no seams, everything is perfectly balanced, and God wouldn't even want to fart around it. That's not what perfection means. Does anybody want to guess what the simplest synonym for perfect is? I will tell you, it's finished. When you are done, it's perfect. Period. You can always tweak it. You can always change it later. You can add things to it, take away, whatever. Doesn't matter. When you've finished with it, it is perfect. And I want you to take that to heart, because otherwise you'll continue to beat yourself up on any project that you're working on that doesn't fit that impossible standard all artists set for themselves, because you are judging past work on what you have learned through the process of doing it. And you can't judge your own work like that. So I hope you guys take that to heart, and I hope you remember that. I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that comes from this class. And the same holds true when you encounter other people's work as well. Okay. Oh, I am looking through here. Oh, necessity of work logs. Did everybody read that section? Necessity of work logs. I think the biggest reason for doing that is to be aware of how valuable your time is, how valuable your work is, because all of you guys are professionals. And one of the biggest problems I think about living in Utah is that the culture here, everybody has to go out of their way and break their backs being nice to each other. And it sucks. I mean, everybody is so nice. I had a friend who just could not stand, he's a jackass, jerk, but he could not stand moving to Logan because he said, everybody is insufferable. They're all pleasant and I hate it. Everybody is nice. Well, what that comes down to, what that ends up meaning is we undervalue our own time because we want to help people. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. And I proved this when I went to China and when I went to Iran. That was the farthest I'd ever been away from. I grew up in Southeast Washington State, downwind of 5 nuclear power plants. So that was the farthest I've ever been away from home. It's literally on the far side of the world. Anywhere you go, you hold out your hand, the other person will hold out their hand to shake your hand, and it's automatic because people want to be nice. 99% of everybody all the time is super nice. The reason why we get this impression that the world is filled with miserable bastards is that there are 200 billion hours of human activity every single day, and when you see it on your news feed, you get the 22 most despicable minutes. All right, you think about that. 22 minutes out of 200 billion hours. That's billion with a B. Everybody is super nice almost all the time. And but it is important if you want to make a living with your artwork, with whatever you do, you need to keep track of your time. You need to value your time. Your time is valuable, and that's why I think one of the best reasons for doing the work log. Also, I think it's important to know when you guys are doing stuff, if you don't get all the points, a lot of the times that's because you didn't put in the time on the project. You did it quickly and you set it away. Almost all these projects are going to be, they should be right around 10 to 15 hours. And consistently across the board, the people that get A's, that's how much time they put into them all the time. When everybody in the class is spending 12 hours on a project and one person spent 2.5 hours, it's interesting because that's the object that nobody really wants to talk about in the discussions. Nobody wants to comment or say you did a good job because they don't think they did. Now, when I've said that and they got a chance to go and redo the grade, it's interesting because the work that they put in to get an A from that point forward is consistent with the hours that everybody else in the class put into the project as well. Isn't that interesting? So if you do something and you think you're all done, look at how much time you spent and it wasn't very much, go over and rework it and keep reworking it. There's a reason for this. There's a couple reasons. One is it's just self-esteem. You want to do a good job on your own stuff. But another one is, how many of you guys here today are 2D people? Almost everybody. A lot of people are. It takes significant focused effort to grow new neuronic pathways, and that's what you're going to be doing through the course of this class. That means you're going to get headaches. What that also means is you need to spend at least 45 minutes minimum just to start the process on any of the 3-dimensional things that you're doing. Anything less than that, your brain is not going to really engage. And I would recommend, even if you got to go back, even if you have only an hour a day to work on your stuff, spend that hour a day. Most of us don't have the time to do everything in the week in one session, and I understand that. That's not what I'm saying. But do put in the time and focus on what you're doing, because that will help make those synapses grow. The neuronic pathways develop and the synapses to fit together. Okay, so we talked about attendance. We talked about most of the other stuff. We talked about my brain is like a pachinko machine, and I was telling you 16 different things at once inside my head, and I lost track of which one I was saying out loud. But we talked about a lot of different things. In the time that we have left, what I want to do is touch on a couple things, and then we're going to talk about the assignment, okay? This is an important section. Read through this. You'll notice that it is due on January 12th. I'm going to say January 19th is going to be just fine. But I want you to go through this. The turn-in stuff I want you to get done on January 19th. Okay. The artist research, if you're going to be doing either research or service. And the artist research is you will have several different project elements of the overarching project that are all required. And this just talks about what that's going to be like. And that means that, and they're staggered through, and you'll see them. They're labeled module 7. So 7A is the initiation of the artist research process. 7B is the first assignment in that process, and we'll talk about that more next week. 7C is the third step in that process, and 7D is the last step in that research process. It is a big project, but I don't know. How many of you guys have a class where there is a gigantic project that is all due at the very end of the term? And like any rational, reasonable person, you put it off as long as you possibly can. And at the end, you're thinking, holy crap, and you got to do all this stuff all at once. I don't like that happening. It happens, but I don't like it happening. And so that's why I split it into 4 different sections, and each of them is a smaller chunk. So we'll talk about those more later. But then, so I want you to be aware of all that. But I also want you to read this section right here, artist research or service learning. You do have an option. If you don't want to do the artist research and you want to apply your specific, unique skill set to helping out the community, we do a service learning option. I want to be very clear though. This assignment is when you choose. You're going to be doing either artist research or service learning. And again, it says January 12th, but we'll have that due January 19th. And after we're done here, I'll change the dates on that. But the service learning, you can do a service project. However, I want to make it completely clear. If you choose to do the service learning, you are not responsible for the artist research option. If you choose to do the artist research, you are not responsible for the service learning option. Nobody should be doing both of these assignments. And I talk about that in this thing. We'll talk about more about it next week. But I want you to make sure that you understand that, because the service learning, you're going to be putting in about 20 hours on this thing altogether. And the artist research, you're going to be putting in about 20 hours. I do not want anybody to do both. Does everybody understand that? You pick one or the other. You cannot do both. The service learning, I've had people do everything from paint a custom skateboard and work on somebody's social media to building a chicken coop for the disabled Army veteran in the neighborhood. You know, it's something where you use your unique skill set, work with somebody in the community that actually needs you to be there, and then you produce something for them and tell us about it. And then that's what that is. Typical class this size, I'll get 5 people that want to do the service learning and everybody else want to do the research. But again, you pick one or the other. You do not do both. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. We're going to look at the work log really quick here. The work log is, it doesn't matter what module it's for. You do a work log for each of the separate modules, and they are all labeled as to which module they go in. But the work log, you basically write down how much time you spent on something and the day. And then at the bottom, you have a total. And that's how hard it is. If you don't have a total, you get a 0. If you don't have it in that kind of format, you get a 0. So, which means you have to spend a miserable minute and a half changing the format and resubmitting. You know, that's how hard it is. And again, you pick one or the other. You do not do both. Now, another thing I want you to be aware of I have this at the beginning. This is not due until the end, and we'll talk about more about it next week. You're going to be filming a critique where you're not filming yourself. On the film, on the video screen, it will have a picture of the artwork. But you're going to be talking out loud and recording yourself going through those 4 steps of artistic critique for your own work and for somebody else's work. And it's going to be about a 3 to 5 minute video. And the due date is April 11th, but you get a lot of extra credit if you turn it in early. And I have here, let's see, critiques from class. This will link you to a previous class that, I'm sorry, it'll link you to a playlist of the video critiques of the previous class. So you can kind of see what people have done. But again, the due date on that is not until April 11th. Okay, so don't worry about that. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, before we go on, and we're only going to have a couple minutes to talk about the assignment, and that's fine. We'll talk about it more in depth next week. When I talk about prep for the first day of class, I have everybody go to the polyhedra.net. Everybody does need to do this. For your attendance, I would really like a picture of this. Well, a lot of people don't. I think it's best if you are able to actually take a picture and submit that with your attendance assignment. How many of you went to polyhedra.net? Okay. What were some of the shapes you guys did? Okay, Polly, what was the shape that you did, Polly?
Hello?
Hey.
Sorry, I don't have a video, a camera.
That's fine. What was the shape that you made?
I haven't made it yet, but I print out the twisted decagonal prism.
Okay.
It will be pink.
Okay. All right,
And
great.
sorry, I didn't mean to raise a hand to speak. I just meant to say, yay, I went to the website.
Okay. All right. No, that's no problem.
Okay, still figuring out how to use this Teams.
Oh, that's no problem.
Thank you.
There is, I think everybody should have the Canvas training thing, but I do not think that there's a lot of material on training how to do Teams. So just do the best you can.
All right.
And you can also go to the help desk, and they can send you links to videos on Teams as well, and on YouTube as well. But that's usually, if I can't figure it out right away, I will go on YouTube. And then my friend Keenan Adcock with tech support, he is so sick and tired of me calling him my friend. I usually will spend a couple hours every semester with him in full panic mode because I can't figure it out. And then at the end, he'll say, "Oh, I understand the problem. All you got to do is this screen, go to this screen and hit that button." And it solves everything. It's so irritating. But oh well, you do what you can. Who has theirs with them? All right, can you show it? Just show it up to the screen. All right, excellent. Great. Now, can anybody spend like just a half minute and describe what the process was of building this? And if you saw any kind of mental shift happening as you were putting it together?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I did the hexagrammic anti-prism, and I noticed that as I was working on it, it felt like a puzzle, like one of the puzzle boxes, and you had to make sure that you folded the lines correctly. Like some of them got folded forward, some got folded backwards. Otherwise, the piece wouldn't fit together. So it was fun for me.
Now, as you were putting it together, what was your holy crap moment? By that I mean when you suddenly realized this two-dimensional piece of paper is actually turning 3D.
I think it was the first time I got one of these. Sorry, it's kind of hard to. One of these little corners inside to match because it fell together really nicely.
Okay.
So
excellent.
I thought that was cool.
That's awesome. Brittany, you get a gold star stapled to your forehead because you gave the exact right answers I was wanting to hear. I have you do this process, and everybody needs to do it at the very beginning. It's not worth very many points, but I want you to recognize that moment when you see the two-dimensional paper becoming three-dimensional and emerging, and when you realize I am making something that's emerging into 3D space. And I want you to grab hold of that as a memory, because that is, I think, that the pivotal shift of consciousness that you need to experience and hold on to as you start working with three-dimensional material. And if you're already a 3D person, that's great. That's not going to be a big shift, but most of you are 2D experts already. And like I said, you will get headaches going through this class. Only a small percentage of that will be directly because of me. And a lot of those headaches will be because your brain has to grow. It has to make those channels. All right. Thank you, Brittany. That was great. Okay. I want to, okay, we wrote blah, blah, blah. We talked about that. Now I have 20 minutes to talk about this first project, which means I don't expect anybody to get it done by next weekend. That's not what the point is. I hope you do, but I'm not expecting anybody to. So I'm going to close that. Sculpture-based photography is what we're working on. And like I said, we'll talk about this more in depth next week. What we're going to be doing is creating a little house, and then the point of this exercise is not the house itself. The point of this exercise is photographing the house in a setting. And then this module is pretty well laid out. This is a pretty good example of what all the modules are going to be. Might be an introduction. There's going to be a little bit of a reading, but the big thing is you're going to have a quiz, and that is really important to read the use open book, your textbook, and use those two sections, because otherwise you will screw up. You won't get the right answers. And then the background is, if we click on that, you can see there are videos of several different artists who make their living using photographing sculpture or sculptural photography. Lots of different kinds, lots of different artists. Some of them do environments like Sandy Skoglund. Some of them make miniatures like Slinkachu. And some of them, Andy Goldsworthy is one of my favorites. He does stuff that are completely ephemeral. They disappear almost immediately, most of his stuff. And the reason we know about his art is primarily because of his photography. Then you're going to have to write a little bit about that in the artist review. And there's, on this, I want you to look at this really quick. This is 3 paragraphs. Does anybody know how long a paragraph is? How many sentences?
3 to 5.
3 to 5. Perfect. So a sentence is not a single line. It's not 5 words. It's 3 to 5 sentences. Paragraph. And what you can do when you write this is copy this whole thing, put that onto a Word document, then put spaces underneath paragraph 1, spaces underneath paragraph 2, and spaces underneath paragraph 3. Write your paragraph 1 directly responding to this prompt. Write your paragraph 2 directly responding to this prompt. And following the same model, write paragraph 3 directly responding to this prompt. Now it talks about this group of artists. What artists is that phrase referring to?
The previous list that you showed us.
Exactly. The artists that you write about for that, are always the artists that are in the background section, period. Okay. I have had students get confused about that and write about artists that they found on the internet. You're not going to do that. You're going to use, and I say that in the assignment parameters, you're going to use the artist that you saw in the background and talk about their art. Okay? Now we get to the assignment, sculpture-based photography. You guys don't have kits yet, and that's not a big deal. I want you to see what people are doing. This assignment is you're making a home out of paper that's about the size of a baseball or a softball. This guy, Charles Young, does a lot of these kinds of things, and you can see that the kind of stuff that he's making. These are all out of tag board and stiff paper. That's what he does. Most of these are really tiny. Yours are going to be about the size of a baseball or, well, a softball. I think a softball is better. And you can see that he's made a lot of different styles of homes. And I'm gonna stop sharing this really quick and just show you something. I understand that nobody has their kit yet, but this is a manila folder. Are any of you old enough to know what manila folders are? Okay. So this is paper. You can use cardstock as well, but this is just fine. And what you're going to do, I'm going to draw a really simple diagram here, and you can use this. You can reference that quartile sites as well. But okay, can you guys see that? No, you can't, can you? How about there? Can you see that? Okay, what I've drawn is this T-shaped thing. If you cut that out and fold it on those lines, can everybody understand how that will make kind of a box? Okay, that is the fundamental model that you'll use to make the house. And I want to show you some examples of the house. And I want you to be aware, this is you can look online, you can find reference points like that. You do not, I really do not want you to just copy somebody else's pattern directly. But if you can look online for foldable gingerbread house ornament, something like that, and it will give you a basic outline. That polyhedra.net can give you some really good ideas for different shapes and stuff like that. But what you're going to do is use tag board as your base. You're going to paint it. You're going to stick things to it. You're going to give it texture. You're going to give it flavor. You're going to cut holes in it so it's interesting to photograph. And you're going to be setting it up to take 5 different photos that you turn in. You can take 30 or 40, I don't care. But you're going to specifically submit 5 different photos. Each photo must be a different time of day, must be a different perspective of the house, and a different setting. I have to be specific about that. I know all you guys get that, but I've had, there seems to be like one person almost every semester who will set their house down in a little diorama they've made in the yard and take 5 pictures as they walk around. No, that's not what you're going to do. I want you to look at some of the examples that I've given and do your best to be creative about taking photos. If you want to do kaiju destruction and have the house burn, save that for your end. That'll be your last photo. But look at this house. This person made like a little red barn. They painted it a bit. They put texture on it. They made this cool little chimney. All these things, they made this whole thing out of cardboard and different materials that they had because they wanted it to be fun to photograph. And that is fun. You have a little bit of texture on it that the shadows will pick out and make it more fun for the camera. And I love the fact that it looks to me like this is like a chicken coop or a barn, and then they have chickens around it. I love this one. This person, now this is not real wood or anything like that. This person just got one of those roller stamps from the craft store that had this brick texture on it. They gave the brick texture to all the tag board, and they cut out and stuck these windows on it. Some of these, what's really kind of fun about this one is that some of these windows have tissue paper where that white is, so that they put a little tea light on the inside, and you could see light coming out of the windows. And the roof is I think in this case, they just made strips of paper, crumpled them up, painted them with brown paint, and then put them parallel so it looks like rows of shingles on the roof. This one is kind of fun. You see the roof is made out of, they used a dark paper, yeah, a dark folder basically, that they kind of wove to get that texture. And then they glued the green underneath it. I think this is really interesting. I love this one. You can see the individual slats that they made. But stuff like this is so much fun to see because it's engaging and interesting to photograph. And this is the same house in front of somebody else's house. And this is one of those ones like that Peter Holmes. It's just kind of a fun miniature, colorful house that they did different things with. And then this is the same house with, again, a tea light inside. And then in a bookshelf. I want to show you some from another semester where you can see that the person has submitted several different, they're one house, but this is how different their images are. And most of these are really good. I don't know if we have any bad examples. I love this house because there's a lot of fun texture to it. I think that's great. You can see they did one outside and they did one with a light inside of it. That's that barn house kind of thing. Oh, you know, this is done by a different person than that other one with the chicken coop. But then that's kind of fun too. In this case, they have a horse instead of chickens. This is kind of fun because to make these little shingles, they cut strips of paper and then halfway cut through them right here, curled that just a little bit so we give that texture to it. And I love that kind of thinking, that kind of processing. And this person made a church steeple or a clock tower, I guess. This is kind of a fun one. They put a lot of texture into this one. Made it a lot of fun. And it is always more interesting to photograph this, and it always is more engaging for the viewer when you put more energy into the house. If you don't care about it and you don't do much to it, it's not going to be interesting to anybody else. And this is kind of a fun design. You can kind of see where they did that relatively simple shape, and then they added the gable to it, and they added this kind of mid-century modern curving greenhouse kind of thing on the side. And you can see all the texture they put in the roof. And when you get those little shadows and stuff like that with your camera, it can look really interesting and be a lot of fun to photograph. This person did a really great job. They even made little flowers to dress it up and give it texture. And I was hoping that we could get to one that really sucked, but a lot of these people did pretty decent. I love this one because they put a lot of time into making that texture fun to look at and experience. That's it. Again, if it's boring to you, it's going to be boring to everybody else too. This is kind of a fun design. I'm not as happy with this one as the others because, well, somebody tell me, why is this not as much fun or engaging as some of the others we looked at? How do you know, what did the doors look like they were done? How were the doors made?
It looks like with marker.
Yeah. How much more fun were the ones where the doors were actually cut out or somebody added the doors on? You see what I'm saying? So this week, get started on designing and building your house and spend the week doing that. And then next week, do the photograph. This is a lot of fun. This kind of thing is kind of fun, is fun to see. However, on this one, I think that they could have made those as something that you could actually see through, maybe even, and you'd have light on the inside came out. One person, I haven't seen it yet, did stained glass in theirs, and that was a lot of fun to see. Yeah, here it is. This person used just clear plastic and then used markers to kind of paint stained glass on it. And one of her photos is of oh, it's not on here that she didn't submit. She showed us in the class, one of her photos had uh, a light source inside so you could see the stained glass glowing, and that was fun. And I love it when people do things with this assignment where they have, for example, the cell phone camera in the fridge and take a picture of it while they're opening the door, or different things like that. Or the camera is inside the house itself and you get the close up of the 2-year-old's face as they're trying to chew on the windows or something. So think about that. Again, we'll talk more about it next week, but go through this module. The big point of this week is I want you to go through everything, kind of see how it feels, do what you can. Hopefully everybody does have tag board, but this first assignment is designed so that you don't need to have the kit to do it. And I don't want, nobody should use that as an excuse not to be able to do this first assignment. Make the house. A couple stipulations, you need to make the house. I don't want something made out of Legos. I don't want something that's from a train set that's already created. You guys are artists, for crying out loud. You can do this. And if you're a digital artist, for example, maybe make a house that you've used in one of your digital paintings, or reproduce a structure that you've taken photographs of, or that you've painted in your illustration class, or whatever. It doesn't matter, but you're going to do a good job making this house. You're going to make it so that you have fun yourself as you photograph it. And it may be that you take 10 or 12 photos. You can use like sepia tone filters or other stuff. But a big part of the grade for this comes from the amount of effort you go into making the house interesting. And again, when you take the 5 views, you will not get credit for setting it up and taking 5 shots as you walk around it. Don't do that, please. Different lighting, different settings, in the tree, under the stairs, having somebody hold it, whatever. Ask if you see Jason Lanigan on campus, if you're on there, ask him to see if you can see some of the photos that he's done of his little buildings, because he's made several little buildings. He takes it with him on trips all the time. And his wife and him love finding cool places to take photos of it. When we were at Capitol Reef a couple of weeks ago, I thought he had gone crazy and started doing rock climbing. And no, it was so that he could get to this inaccessible rock just so he could take a photo of his little church that he made. He does stuff like that all the time. And he has some really good stories about, like, the time he met a biker gang. And he and his wife had stopped at the side of the road. He was in Nevada, I think. And he put his little church up because he wanted to get a photo of it in this desolate landscape. And this biker gang came up, and he thought, oh no, what are they going to do? And he thought, well, they're going to be nice. I'm just manifesting that they're nice. And they were nice. They just came up and said, hey, what are you doing? And he told them. They said, can we be in the photo? And so he has several photos of all these heavy metal biker gang guys holding the church, being silly around it, being serious around it. But it was just a really fun experience. So, and if you guys are going anywhere over the next 2 weeks, maybe you want to take this with you and take photos of it somewhere. That'd be kind of fun. But I'm gonna work on this too, and next week we'll get back together and we'll see where everybody is on this part of the process. As we split up for tonight to meet again next Wednesday, any last comments or questions from anybody?
I have one.
Okay.
On the house, do we have to make a traditional house, or could I make the roof in the shape of a hat?
As long as it's about that size, so we're talking small cantaloupe, big softball, something like that. And as long as it is identifiable as a potential living structure, it can be a living structure for Fey folk. It doesn't really matter. And it can be a reproduction of a Route 66 A&W with the hat. You know, that's whatever you like to do. I think the parameters should be that it looks like a living structure and it is well crafted. It needs to endure the rigors of moving it around and taking photos of it in different places, right? And it should be fun for you to take photos of. So texture, color, different things like that. Good question. Any other questions? All right, folks. I hope you guys have an absolutely awesome week. Thank you again. We have, let's see, 8. We have 10 people here tonight, which to be honest, were 9 more than I expected. So I really appreciate that. And I hope all of you can make it next week as well. We are going to be doing this Wednesday nights, and we're only going to be doing it once a week. But again, if you don't make it, you can watch the video or the recording of it. But thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope if anybody does have questions and they can't make it, email me and I'll address the question in the next meeting. All right. Thank you, folks. And I'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.